Hi, this is Joe Green, head pastor of Antioch Assembly Church located in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Also the founder of the 2019 movement, and I want to share a couple of thoughts with you. I want to talk about a couple of key issues that we've been dealing with lately in the country, especially as it pertains to people of color. But first, I want to say this. I want to say one of the things that we understand as a culture, as black people, we are very emotional people. We are prone to emotion, and especially when you have an environment where you have a lack of male dominant figures in society. You have a breakdown of the family where you have a lot of single mothers. And so these single mothers are raising both males and females, but especially the young males are being raised by women, and women by nature are more emotional creatures. That's a biological fact. We all understand that. Even women know that they are more prone to emotions. And so it has created a more emotionally charged atmosphere within the black community. With that being said, the powers that be understand that we are a very emotional people, which is why they play on our emotions in order to push us in the direction that they want us to go in. So they use mainstream media, and this is historic, they use mainstream media, they use entertainment, whether it's actors, musicians, athletes, in order to spark an emotional response in us. So even in the news, they use the news. The news is based on this the news is based on this platform, if you will, this philosophy of trauma-based mind control for mass manipulation. I'm going to say that again, trauma-based mind control for mass manipulation. Now I'm going to explain it. You don't have to know this for yourself, but what it is in order to really control people, if you can tug them by their heartstrings and get them emotionally involved in something, then it's more easy to manipulate the masses. It's much easier to manipulate a large group of people if you can spark an emotional response in them. And so they understand that, which is why they use what they use, the tools and the agenda that they use in order to manipulate black people, right? And especially because we are a very emotional people. So when you look at mainstream media, they always want to really push the whole theme of racism to the nth degree in order to get us involved, but what they do is they use what we call the Hegelian dialectic, which means they're actually controlling the narrative. They're controlling both sides of the narrative, and they do that to push us into a certain area, into a certain direction as a whole. And and they've been very effective of it. And I'm going to show you this. If you've been following the 2019 movement and some of the videos we've been doing, I've been showing how because they have connected to us emotionally, and they're easy. They use certain tools to manipulate us. We're being manipulated a lot. Case in point, President Obama was black, and they gave him a symbol of hope and change. But what most people didn't realize is that he's actually just another tool of what a lot of black people call white supremacy. I call him the global elite. He worked for the global elite, so he was pushing their agenda, but because they knew he was black and because he knew how to present himself in a way that black people connected to emotionally, we were passionately defending him. And how do I know that? I know that because facts do matter. So if you look at even President Trump, who has the opposite effect on black people, and because he's kind of like the anti-Obama, right? He is the inverse of Obama. And because of that, it is easy for black people to be manipulated emotionally by him. So we respond to him because not only is he not Obama, but he is opposite of Obama. He has a different type of demeanor. He has a different platform that he's standing with. And because of that, we immediately reject him, and we're going in the opposite direction. And so that may even be a ploy of the global elite, if you will, because it doesn't matter. And like I said, the reason being is because the last 50 years we've been being manipulated as black people to be Democrats and be liberals, even though that wasn't our nature, that wasn't what our culture was. But because they emotionally connected with us and presented themselves as the champion for the blacks and Hispanics and the underclass, that we've attached ourselves to them. And so now if you're Republican or conservative, they automatically discount you. Right? They put you in a category, they call you racist, a bigot, etc., etc. And the reason that I know this to be the case, and facts do matter, is if you can measure something, then it should override your emotional response if you can see the facts of a matter. So there were several things that President Obama said, and I think that they did this on purpose. There was almost word for word what George Bush said and the Clintons and some other people. President Trump said almost the exact same thing that Obama and the Clintons said, but because they've emotionally taught us to hate President Trump, and they've convinced us through no facts that he's a racist and a bigot, because they continue to repeat that those same talking points, then when he says the same thing that Obama said, he's considered stupid, harsh, mean-spirited. But Obama said the same things, but yet when he said them, or the Clintons said the same things when they said them, because they convinced us that they're our friends, we believed it. So with illegal immigration, Obama and the Clintons said word for word what President Trump said, almost line for line. It's almost like the same person wrote the speech, but because Trump said it and because they told us that he's our enemy, we don't want to hear it. So that's how emotions get in the way, because if what the person is saying is right and it's beneficial for us, then we should listen to it regardless of who's saying it. We should stand on principles and not stand with people, because sometimes people can let us down, but principles, if you're a principled person, you'll always stand for the right principles. Right? So the Hegelian dialectic, they manipulate us, they control both sides of the argument. So even with Dr. Ben Carson, who's a Republican and he's a conservative, because black people have been brainwashed into believing conservatives and Republicans are our enemies, or if you're black, you're a sellout, if you're white, you're racist or bigot. So even though this Ben Carson, the one who gifted hands, who came from Detroit, came from the hood, came from a single mom, he worked his way up through education, and he stands for all the good and right things in society. But because of him being a Republican and a conservative, black people call him Uncle Tom or Coon or something like that. There was a quote that Ben Carson said that, all of us are immigrants unless you're a Native American, even those who came on slave ships, right? So they made him look like he was stupid. He should be educated about what an immigrant is. He said immigrants come from all different walks of life. Even some of those were slaves, were immigrants. Obama said almost word for word the same thing about 5 years earlier, but black people weren't in uproar. And not even black people, but mainstream media let him have a pass on that. So if it's stupid when Ben Carson said it, it had to be stupid when Obama said it. And when you understand that actual open borders and influx of illegal immigrants is part of the globalist strategy to destroy America, but not only that, but the Civil Rights Commission has proven that illegal immigrants hurt black males more than anybody else. So we as black people should be against illegal immigration as well. But because we've been convinced that that's a Republican thing and a conservative thing, even though it benefits us, we still stand against it. And that's foolishness, see? Because they understand that we're such emotional beings that we will evacuate logic in areas where our emotions are being attached to. So we got to come out of that, right? So that's the first thing. Understand also that they're trying to promote a race war. That's part of the globalist strategy. They've been doing this since the 1950s and 1960s. They've been trying to promote a race war in America in order to destabilize the country, implement martial law, so they can come in and take over. That's their strategy. That's what they've said. That's part of their plan, the New World Order. They want martial law, and they can get a martial law if you have rioting in the streets. They can come in and bring in a police state. And they control the narrative. So even in regards to race, if you know that they're trying to promote a race war, they only show you incidences where black people are getting beaten by the police or victimized or shot by the police. They only show you those images. And even though disproportionately maybe black people are being targeted, but by the numbers, more white people are being assaulted and killed by police, and that's a statistic. That's not opinion. More white people are murdered by police. And when I say murder, let me not use murder, are killed in police interactions, because not every time a person gets killed by a cop are they a murderer. There was just a trial not long ago close by here in Pennsylvania where a guy showed up at the police station with a shotgun. He was being charged with running a child sex ring. So he showed up at the police station with a shotgun, and they shot and killed him. Right? So that they killed him, but that's not murder because they were defending themselves. But anyway, more people by numbers, white people get killed by cops than black people. Why is that significant? That's significant because you never see on the news, on CNN, you never have seen over the last years, several years since Trayvon Martin, you've never seen a white person on CNN that has gotten killed by a cop, right? Why is that? If you're just reporting the news, you should show, if you wanted to show people getting killed by cops, you should show all of them, or at least a reasonable cross-section of them, right? A certain percentage. Even if they don't show every black person that gets shot by a cop, but they should show a reasonable percentage. So if you're reporting the news and you want to be accurate, you should report you should show instances where white people get killed by cops as well. When you show police brutality, they only show a black person getting brutalized by the cop or taken advantage of. But should we say that if more white people get harassed by cops, and I'm saying by numbers, not by percentages, if more white people got harassed by cops, then you should say it's a cop problem. Cops need to be better trained, that they are overzealous in their work, as opposed to just saying like these band of cops is going around just simply targeting black people. Again, it's a matter of when you understand their ultimate goal, you should also understand their strategy. Now, with that being said, we as black people also have to understand means and ends. Right? So means and ends. So if we have an end or an ultimate goal, we have to make sure that we're using the right means to get to the right goals, right? So what emotionalism does and what these knee-jerk reactions do in the black community is that when something happens, when we see an issue, we all stand up and we get emotional, and then the powers that be shape the narrative to get us to put our efforts and energies in the wrong place. So we end up protesting and doing stuff, but we're protesting the wrong people in the wrong places, and we're even protesting the wrong issues. So that's what happens. So anyway, let's talk about a couple of things. The first thing I want to talk about is the NFL protests, right? So the NFL owners have come up with a new policy on these national anthem protests. If you recall, it's been almost 2 years ago that Colin Kaepernick began to kneel when they played the national anthem at the beginning of the game. And what he said is that he was protesting racial inequality and police brutality, right? So those are things that we could say are real issues, right? Racial inequality and police brutality. So that's a good salient thought, right? He's saying that these are issues that I see. Something should be done about it. This is why I'm protesting, right? So, but nobody else really, only a couple of people, a handful of people here and there even supported this protest, right? Most people were against it, even most NFL players. And when he wasn't able to get picked up by a team in the offseason last year, nobody even really said nothing. Very few people even came to his rescue. But then President Trump makes a statement about the protesters, and I think he said something, he called them, used a curse word regarding the players, and then all the rest of the league wanted to get involved in it. Then all the other players, not all of them, but a whole lot of the other players wanted to get involved in as well. So just by that, you understand that this is because of the hatred towards Trump that they got involved, and not necessarily because of criminal and racial inequality and police brutality. Because racial inequality and police brutality didn't just come around, so why is it now all of a sudden it's becoming such a hot button topic? And it's primarily because it's become an anti-Trump protest more than protesting against racial injustice and police brutality, right? So, and again, the reason that I'm bringing this up is because of the emotions involved. Because we never solve anything if we just have these knee-jerk reactions based on emotions. So think about it this way. First of all, you got to know who your audience is, who are you protesting, and what is your expected goal. So anytime I would protest something, I would try to have at least one or two solutions that I felt were reasonable solutions in order to offer, right? It's like the old scenario. I had an aunt who used to always say, if you're driving down the street and a dog is chasing your car, if you get out and hand the dog the keys, what is he going to do with it? So a lot of times we protest and we get all emotional and we get stirred up, but we don't have an end game, right? We don't know what our solution is because, this NFL protest, I believe that there is racial inequality in America. I believe that there is a certain level of police brutality, especially disproportionately against blacks. I know for a fact that some of the policies of police forces, police departments was racial profiling. So to me, that's racism 101. They had a policy in place because racism is actually institutional and it is systematic. Racism isn't just that somebody doesn't like you. The actual definition of racism is it's institutional and systematic, which means if a police force, which is an institution, police department, has a policy in place that targets a certain group of people, that is racism because it's systematic and it's institutional. You can address racism. You can go to these police forces and say, if you have a policy in place, whether it's written or unwritten, that targets a certain group of people, profiling them because of their race, then that is racism and that has to be dealt with, right? So you have to change your policy. You can do that. That is a solution that can be very much, you know, when you had affirmative action was actually supposed to be a solution to institutionalized racism. So you had slavery, right, in America. You had Jim Crow and the Negro Codes that actually was racism because it targeted groups of people and blocked them from certain institutions, right? So now you have affirmative action that was a solution to racism, to an institutional, systematic thing that happened in America, right? The Rooney Rule in the NFL, which means that every NFL team, when they have an opening for a coaching position, they have to interview people of color in the process, right? That is to offset the fact that up until a certain amount of time, you didn't have any coaches that were African Americans or people of color, right? So that's what it happens when you're trying to accomplish something. And the problem with it is when you don't do that, like a lot of people, so what, they're just making their voices be heard. But what happens is you end up in a worse position, because if you always are protesting things and you don't have a strategy and you don't have an end game, then what the rest of the people do is they will grow weary, because what they're saying is nothing ever changes. We're always talking about something, but it never changes. But the problem is you didn't have a solution, you didn't have a plan, you were just protesting, you were just complaining. And because of that, nothing will change, because how can you change it? Think about that for a second. The reason I think that this is important, and I need to share this with you, is because so many people are up in arms at the current policy, and they say the NFL missed it again and they dropped the ball. And I disagree with you, because first of all, the reason being these NFL owners who are very wealthy, and some of them are multi-generational wealth. They've been around, they understand business, they are either billionaires or 100 millionaires, right? So they understand money. Many of these NFL teams, those teams have been in the family for many years, many years. The Rooney family, they're the only family I think that ever owned the Steelers, and the Steelers, their organization is like 80 years old, right? So, or more, might be longer than that. But anyway, so they understand money, they understand business, they understand the platform that they have and the product that they have. Because you got to realize that the NFL is entertainment. It is not a vital institution. So it's not a hospital, it's not a school system, it's not, you know, public works, it's not anything like that. It's optional, it's entertainment. You can either watch it or not watch it. You can either play in the NFL or not play in the NFL, right? So it's optional. So first of all, you got to put it in a different category. But the second, but the most important thing is you have a certain product, and it's an entertainment product, but you have the reason that it's successful and these players make so many millions of dollars is because people pay money for the gear, they pay money for tickets, they pay money in the for the vendors, right? All these things. So in order to be smart about things, as the owners are trying to be, you don't want to violate your customers, because that's the reason why you have so much income. The reason you're able to pay these players tens of millions of dollars a year. You know, some of these players make $10 or $20 million a year, $15 million a year. The reason you're able to pay them is because of the product you're selling, which is entertainment. People come to see the games, they watch it on television, they buy the jerseys and buy the hats and all that other stuff, which brings revenue in. So it wouldn't make sense to alienate them when 80% of the people that pay money to come see NFL games, 80% of the people that watch it on television, 80% of the people that buy the gear are white males, right? White males. So you got to know your audience. You have to have a strategy and a plan. And what I'm saying to you is they are protesting the wrong places and the wrong things, right? Because, for instance, in order to make change, you need influence, you need a platform, and you need resources. Those are three things that you need in order to make change, a social change. You need a platform, you need influence, and you need resources. NFL players have all three, and they have all three because of their owners having this platform in place for people to come and see you, right? So the owners, and most of these owners, like I said, have been around for a while. Some of these owners have probably owned the team long before these people were even born. The players were born, right? So what you're doing with Colin Kaepernick and the other people are doing, they're actually hurting the very platform that gives them the ability to make change, right? Because what these owners are saying is that a lot of the people that go to the games are offended by the protest. There's a lot of veterans that don't want to see people kneeling when the national anthem is playing. And they have a right to feel that way. So guess what they would do is if I'm a veteran and that offends me to see these players, these multi-million-dollar players kneeling, then I cannot watch the game. I can take my money back. I can boycott the games and boycott the advertisers at the games, right? So ultimately that's going to hurt it's a vicious cycle that will ultimately hurt the players, hurt the league, which hurts the players, which will now damage the platform that they have. It damages their influence. It damages their platform, right? So a lot of people that are watching them, I promise you there's probably a lot of people, and he may or not have cared about this. There's a lot of people that now don't like Colin Kaepernick and wouldn't listen to anything he said because they were offended by what he did, right? So he's actually alienated those people, and a lot of those people were probably in his corner. So if Colin Kaepernick and these other players, they could have had a public forum, they could go to the actual places, because these owners aren't the ones who are brutalizing people. The owners aren't the one who's causing racial inequality, because 70% of the players in the NFL are black. 70%. Some of the highest paid players in the NFL are black. And they're not getting paid that much because these people just love black people, or that they're racist. They're paying them this much money because they understand business, they understand the product that they have, and so they want to put the best players on the field, because that's what's attracting people to come see them. When you have somebody like Cam Newton, right, who's a black NFL quarterback, years ago they didn't have any black quarterbacks. The reason that they started allowing black quarterbacks is because some of these black quarterbacks were so exceptional that not only did they give them the ability to win games, but people pay money to come see them. Michael Vick, people would pay money to come see Michael Vick because he was such an exciting player, right? So you got to understand the platform, you got to understand the protest and the purpose behind it. What is the ends to your means? And so that's why I have a problem with it. I believe that the owners are doing the right thing because they're trying to protect, they're trying to balance this thing out. So they're trying to show respect to the players and their opinions and their First Amendment rights, while not alienating and damaging the very product that's allowing for all this to take place. The reason we're talking about Colin Kaepernick is because he was on a huge platform. He played in the Super Bowl. He was an athlete that's worth millions of dollars, and because of that, that's why we all even paid attention to his opinion about it. Not because we felt like he was a genius, or he was a political analyst, or he was some kind of a freedom fighter. Not because of that, but because he was a famous football player that we watched and we loved seeing him run up and down the field and throw the ball up and down the field, right? So I want you to understand that as black people, we have to get out of emotionalism. We have to be more strategic. We have to look at who we're protesting to. Because what is Art Rooney, or whatever, Dan Rooney, I think is the owner, what is he, how is he contributing to police brutality? How is he contributing to racial inequality? Because like I said, he has a black coach. He hired a black coach. He's has a large amount of Pittsburgh Steelers are black, and I'm saying that to say we have to look at things not from an emotional standpoint, but from a practical sense. How can we exact change? Who is it that we really need to target? Who needs to listen to these messages, right? The NBA has it right. The NBA said you all got to stand up, because we don't want to take the chance at alienating the very people that are paying and contributing and supporting this great platform that we have, which is the NBA, that's watched around the world, right? So the ends needs to justify the means. We can't do things from an emotional standpoint. We can't have a knee-jerk reaction, because even though I believe that there is racial inequality and there is police brutality, but let's be strategic in how we do it. Let's not just jump on the bandwagon because, yeah, he's standing up for his rights. But how are things going to change based on that? What is the owner supposed to do? Why is this guy who comes to the stands, who scrapes up enough money, a middle-class family, who scrapes up enough money to pay a ticket for his kid and himself and his wife and whatever, to come to this game because they love the game, they love the players, and then they get offended because they see this person kneeling and they're saying, what are you complaining about? I make minimum wage. I make $40,000 a year. You make $40,000 a game, but you're telling people how unfair life is, right? So you gotta be strategic, right? The ends needs to justify the means. Now the second thing I want to talk about is this: there was a article that Ted Cruz, who said there was a shooting in Santa Fe, Texas, but it's not getting the same amount of publicity as Parkland and some of the other schools got. And he says it's because the Santa Fe students aren't calling for gun control. Now, just very briefly, if you, like I said, please subscribe to my channel and hit the notifications, go through the videos. I talked about gun control. I talk about the strategy of the globalists. The strategy of the globalists, which is for one world government, is to do away with the Second Amendment. Because in order for every totalitarian system, they did away with people's guns, they did away with their religious beliefs, they weren't allowed to practice their Christianity. And that's what they're trying to do in America, because the globalists are trying to move us into a totalitarian state to make way for a one world government, new world order. This is what they've said. This is not me making this up. This is their goal and their strategy. So one of the ways to do it is to get rid of the Second Amendment, which gives us the right to own and to bear arms, right? To legally bear arms. And so these shootings, they're using that as a situation to pull on the emotional strings of America, for Americans to put pressure on their legislators to do away with the Second Amendment, or limit to such a great degree our ability to defend ourselves, because the Second Amendment gives us the right to defend ourselves, and primarily against governmental tyranny. So the government is trying to come against us, or trying to be tyrannical against us, is the very ones that's helping to push this agenda. And we're falling for it many times, right? So kids, again, the ends have to justify the means. You got to do something. Stop school shootings, right? And that's a knee-jerk emotional reaction that we all believe that that's a positive statement. But how do you get that done, right? It's like saying people have to stop being mean to each other, right? We all agree people should stop being mean to each other. But how does that get done? Is that practical? Is that even possible, right? So, and I want to say this because black people are reacting. And again, because of the emotionalism, because Ted Cruz is a Republican and a conservative, and black people have been lied to and deceived into believing that if you're Republican and conservative, you have to be a bigot and a racist, that we're not going to agree with what Ted Cruz is saying, right? The liberals, the Democrats, the leftists are really pushing gun control because they're a tool of the New World Order, one world governmental system, right? Whether they know it or not, they're a tool. That's the strategy that the New World Order is using. They're using leftists and liberals in order to push their agenda, right? So, with that being said, because we are brainwashed and we've been deceived into thinking these things, then we're not in support of the NRA. So we've even said the NRA, they're a bunch of redneck hicks that don't like black people, right? It's because we don't understand the issue. Because if you look historically, black people have always been supportive of the Second Amendment, especially from the time of Jim Crow, the Negro Codes, and even the Civil Rights Movement. You had a lady by the name of Ida B. Wells, who was one of the founding members of the NAACP, who was a staunch proponent for the Second Amendment. And she was such a advocate for it because in the Deep South, she witnessed the lynching, a black man being lynched by a mob. And she said if this black man who had the constitutional right to own a firearm had a gun, things would have went down differently. So she started to advocate for black people to really be supportive of the Second Amendment. The Black Panther Party, and during the 60s, the NRA was very supportive of gun rights, the Second Amendment, even when it meant that the Black Panther Party and other black activist groups used their Second Amendment right to own firearms to protect themselves and their community. Right? But now because they try to flip the script and because they understand how to push our buttons, they've convinced us that the NRA is racist, right? Because they're conservatives, they're white people, they don't have anything to do with us. Ted Cruz is he's a Republican and he's a conservative, so we don't want to listen to him. And actually, when you understand the strategy, when you understand the game, when you understand the issue, we as black people, we have historically, my grandparents and great-grandparents, all of them had shotguns, they had guns, especially those who lived in the rural areas, and they said this was to protect their family and their household. And we don't have, that I know of, any situations in my family where a white mob came and did something to I had some grandparents and great-grandparents that were really quick. I had a grandma, and they said, my grandma Adeline from South Carolina, they said that they saw her take one of those shotguns with the thing with one hand, and she was holding the baby in one and jacked it with the other and fired on somebody. because they really believed in the Second Amendment, right? Because they understood that that was a constitutional right given to us for us to protect ourselves. So when you and when we talk about the fact that we believe that the system's against us, that there's police brutality, there's all these other things that's against us as a black community, isn't it ironic how they've convinced us to be against one of the very tools that was meant to help us to protect and to defend ourselves? The very system of white oppression, as you guys talk about, white supremacy, that black people are always talking about, is the same system that's trying to convince you to give up your handguns. You already said you don't trust them, and that they've shown that they're against you, so why now are you trusting them to protect you from their tyranny? Doesn't make sense. We got to wake up, people. We got to wake up. It's a time for us to wake up. That's what the 2019 movement is about. You got to understand the timing that we're in. We got to understand the real issues in order for us not to get taken advantage of. Like it says, like the old saying goes, you fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. We shouldn't follow after the same pattern and find ourselves in the same position. It's time for us to wake up. It's time for us to get off the liberal leftist plantation and for us to be free thinkers, open-minded, looking at facts and not giving over to emotion in every situation. This has been Pastor Joe Green. I love you with the love of Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach. Until next time, peace and blessings to you. Shalom.